So we have to start by diving into a little bit of older news in the Los Angeles Lakers, who on Thursday afternoon solidified JJ Redick to be their next head coach. And this has been a little bit of a long time coming to some degree. Redick was one of the biggest names that was thrown out there, most heavily tied to the Lakers throughout this head coaching search. Now, obviously, we had that whole sort of side quest going on where the Lakers were going after UConn's Dan Hurley, who publicly rejected them. And there was a little bit of speculation whether or not Redick would be okay with coming back into this situation after publicly it was clear that he was sort of the second option or their second choice in all of this. But ultimately, Redick does take the job. It is his first time coaching above the youth level, which definitely has some people concerned, but obviously somebody who just recently retired from the NBA, played 15 years in the league, and has been around basketball even since retiring. So his overall knowledge of the game really isn't in much question here, but is it going to be enough for the Lakers as they look to try and, I wouldn't say, it's sort of a retooling, you could say, of they have been a playoff team the past couple years. They even made the Western Conference Finals in 2023, but there are still a lot of questions as to the legitimacy of what is the ceiling with this group. You have LeBron James, you have Anthony Davis, but there are a lot of question marks outside of that. And, last year with the head coaching situation, Darvin Ham was clearly not the right person to figure out this puzzle. Also a first-time head coach there. Ham just never really seemed to have a good grasp on what the Lakers needed to do. He was playing with the rotations throughout the entirety of the year, whether or not Austin Reeves and D'Angelo Russell could coexist in a starting lineup, having their minutes sort of yanked back and forth. And that is sort of a bigger conversation as to the roster construction in general. But the point being, Ham wasn't enough. What makes us think that JJ Redick is going to be able to elevate the Lakers to this next level? Now, JJ Redick, he gets a 4-year contract with the Lakers, so he's going to seemingly have a little bit of leeway. After 4 years, we'll see if it even is still LeBron and AD in LA. But ultimately, regardless, the idea right now for the Lakers is that they are trying to win this season. And again, I'm curious behind closed doors what those conversations exactly look like in terms of expectations, because I really don't think that Darvin Ham, for as much criticism as he received, I don't think he underachieved necessarily with the Lakers. He was given 2 years. Both years a low seed, which is definitely part of the conversation, but made the Western Conference Finals and, still made the playoffs the next year. Now, in both of those series combined that they ended up going out in, they only took 1 out of 9 games, so that's not ideal, of course, but again, it's a question as to whether or not JJ can actually change any of those results. Now, what Redick does bring is, I think that respect is going to be something much easier for him to grasp than it ever was for Darvin Ham. When you talk about a coach coming in with having no head coach experience in the past, and especially in JJ's position here, where his only other coaching history is with a youth team, that is typically a very tough obstacle to overcome, especially when you have some greats on your team, let alone LeBron James, one of, if not the most accomplished basketball player in the history of the game. But because of the fact that LeBron and JJ have been doing these podcasts together, it's a little bit of a running joke for the internet. But at the same time, I do think that there's going to be a real respect between LeBron and Redick, where it would be very easy for LeBron to sort of steamroll any first-time head coach and just make it his team. JJ Redick is somebody that I think that he is going to have extensive respect from LeBron James that's going to trickle down the rest of the organization. So that's something that I think is a very big plus. And it's because of the fact that he has very clear knowledge of the modern game in the NBA, considering the fact that he played in the NBA for 15 years, just retired in 2021, and since then has been around the league. So all of these are positive things. I think that JJ Redick does have very good potential to be a successful head coach in the NBA. But I still have reservations in terms of, does this actually solve anything for the Lakers? Where anybody who thinks that Darvin Ham was the sole reason the Lakers lost to the Nuggets last year, I think they're lying to themselves. Maybe if the Lakers had a better regular season, they could have avoided running into the Nuggets in the first round for sure. But either way, I don't think that they were a top 3 team in the Western Conference, and in fact, would definitively say they're not. I know a lot of people, you can interpret it however you'd like, but I believe that the Nuggets, the Mavericks, and the Timberwolves were all definitively better than the Lakers this past year. And, when you're talking about the regular season success and how that inflects upon Darvin Ham, the easiest possible path for them in the playoffs would have been probably them losing that first play-in tournament game and ending up as the 8th seed to play an inexperienced Oklahoma City. Now, you can debate whether or not the Lakers would have had, I think the Lakers would have had a chance against the Thunder. We saw the regular season matchups. It was clear that OKC didn't necessarily have the size in the postseason. It seemed like the Mavericks in that Western Conference semifinal series, every big rebound went the other way. So maybe the Lakers could have, come out of the first round possibly and upset the Thunder, but I think that ultimately the Lakers weren't doing anything this season that was going to be that substantial. And that's because what we saw in the first round when they played the Nuggets was that it was LeBron James and Anthony Davis versus Nikola Jokic, and really a little bit of Jamal Murray, a lot of inconsistency for him in the first round and in the postseason in general. Michael Porter Jr. was actually, the legitimate number 2 option in terms of his efficiency and his scoring output and everything in that series. But it was, outside of the star players, the main core, what do you have? And the Lakers were just entirely outclassed outside of their top 2, where they never really stood a chance. And I would say that in this past playoffs, there was a little bit of a theme in terms of what can you get from your other guys, where more so than ever, and you talk about the Celtics championship in particular, where Jason Tatum is, in my eyes, the best player on the team, but he's not a consensus top 3, top 4. He may not even be top 5 player in the NBA. And you have Jaylen Brown, of course, who's another star in that top 15 to 20 range as well, but not your traditional, star power takeover in the finals. And we saw Tatum and even Brown too, as the playoffs went on, take on a little bit more playmaking responsibilities because they could trust their teammates to knock down these shots. And then you look at the other teams that were powered by their stars throughout the postseason, the Mavericks with Luka, the Timberwolves with Anthony Edwards, even the Knicks with Jalen Brunson. Each of these other teams, we saw incredible individual runs, but why did their teams get knocked out of the playoffs? It was because there wasn't enough help. Because, for Brunson and Luka, their bodies were physically wearing down. Anthony Edwards, inexperienced, years old, he was exhausted, it looked, and mentally fatigued almost as well by the end of that Western Conference Finals, where, I think that when you tie this back to the Lakers, outside of their top 2, what were their real options? Now, Austin Reeves is somebody that I think is interesting because he went from being a little bit overrated when he first emerged onto the scene, and now I do think he goes a little bit underappreciated. He is a good player, a baseline good role player that the Lakers very much need. But, even outside of that, if he's your third star, that's a little bit of an issue in its own. And then the fact that after Austin Reeves, there really wasn't anything going for the Lakers where they couldn't get help on either side of the ball. It's one thing when you have even a Jared Vanderbilt, who of course spent the playoffs injured. He might have returned at the end of the playoffs. I don't think so, though, at the end of that series, that is. But out of the 8 players who actually got playing time for the Lakers in that first round, half of them shot under 40% from the field, which is just miserable. You can't have that because it gets to this point where, teams are solely locking in on your stars. And again, if you want to sort of talk an overall theme here in the playoffs, for the Celtics, they were fully abandoning shooters other than Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving when they were trying to shoot from above the break, and they were willing to live with whatever shots went down. Spoiler alert, the majority of them didn't go in. And, the Mavericks are probably going to be out shopping for maybe some supplementary role players. The Lakers absolutely need to as well, because they right now are sort of without depth, or not even that they're top heavy, because it's just those two. It's not even like they have a third star if you're going the sort of super team built model. The Lakers have a lot of issues still, and I do like JJ Redick as a head coaching candidate. Now, I feel like he would be better off probably with an organization that isn't immediately, in the pressure cooker just based off of the job title alone of being the Los Angeles Lakers head coach. But also, again, I'm really curious what those conversations behind the scenes are with the Lakers and JJ Redick during this negotiation of, I wouldn't say a leash necessarily, because JJ Redick understands that this job comes with pressure and that he's going to need to succeed. But what were sort of the parameters of him taking this job? What is viewed as an unsuccessful season? Because I look at the Western Conference, and I mentioned the 3 teams that were definitively better than them in the Mavericks, the Timberwolves, and the Nuggets. Then you add in here Oklahoma City is only going to be better next year, I would have to imagine, at least from a playoff standpoint. Number 1 seed last year, which is impressive, but ultimately we know it's all about the playoffs. They have that additional experience, already made a roster move that is going to improve them for next year. I really do think that people have sort of forgotten about the Memphis Grizzlies when they return with Ja Morant and whatever you can get out of Marcus Smart still at his point in his career. They're likely going to go out and look for a big option. If they could get like a Nick Claxton, or if they somehow even find their way into Donovan Clingan in the NBA draft that we're going to be talking about very shortly. I feel like those are, you get a true big man in that locker room as well. I feel like they're going to be a scary team, and you can go on with a number of these different organizations in the West. It is a deep conference, and I struggle to believe that the Lakers are going to be able to fully correct it, but let me know what your thoughts are in the comments section. I would be happy to answer any questions, but we are going to be taking our first break here, and we're going to be diving into some questions around the NBA draft. As the draft week is officially here, we're just a couple days away, so I want to dive into some of the latest buzz on that. So stick with us, and we will be right back after this quick break.